Hello everyone, this is Derek from CoreX Training, and today we're going to do a 1,000 round update on the Stealth Arms Platypus. So I got this gun last summer and it has over 1,000 rounds on it now, based on a bunch of matches and just some practice. So I'm happy to report no failures in the Platypus in over 1,000 rounds using new Glock magazines. So the mags it came with, plus some new 33 round sticks that I use for competition. No failures. It should be noted that the ammunition used the whole time is it's competition loads. So they're 147 grain loads that come out at about 135 power factor. If you know what that means, that makes sense. If you don't, suffice it to say, this is not shooting, defensive plus P ammunition. The loads are a little on the lighter side, but I have, the recoil spring and stuff tuned for competition loads, and no failures in 1,000 rounds, which is awesome. However, over the course of the last 6 months, shooting this in a dozen or so matches, there were some things that I thought maybe I could do a little differently, maybe that I would go back and change. And the nice part about Stealth Arms is that you can change everything. This gun is totally customizable. So I went and did that. Yep, I now have a second Platypus that came, I don't know, a month ago now. So match season's pretty much winding down here. In the mid-Atlantic, the Northeast. There are a few matches here and there, but basically it's all indoor range stuff for me until March. So this gun already has over 500 rounds through it. Again, no failures. Again, same sort of competition load style. Probably a little slower because the barrel's a little shorter, but basically 135 power factor, give or take a couple. And no failures in 500 rounds. So why did I buy a second Platypus? Was there anything wrong with the first one? No. If you're just using it as a range gun or even a home defense nightstand kind of gun, works great, no problem. There were some things though specifically for competition that I found I wanted to do differently. So let's talk about that. There are four major parts that I changed, four major things that I changed, and every single one of those is for a competition reason. So the first one is the grip. The grip on the original gun is fine, but it's not particularly aggressive. It would be comfortable to carry, because if it touched your skin, it wouldn't bother you, but it's not particularly aggressive. So there were a few times in matches where I wanted a better grip on the gun. I'm not a big fan of hand goo. A lot of people these days put goo or chalk or whatever the latest fad whiz-bang product is. I don't like that stuff, primarily because I'm not just a handgun shooter. I'm also using rifles and PCCs, and it just doesn't work for me with long guns. So I don't like goo. And I felt I would have needed to use goo for this grip. So it's a fine grip, but on the new gun, I went with the super aggressive grip. There are a couple of options on Stealth Arms' website. This is literally the most aggressive grip option. In fact, they kind of warn you on the website, hey, you really don't want this. This is too aggressive. And I can see what they're saying. If you're not coming from a competition background, when I hand people this gun, every single time, every person says, "Oh my God, how do you hold that? How do you grip that? It hurts my hands." Well, that's kind of the point. We shoot in the cold, we shoot in the rain, we shoot when it's really hot. Your hands are cold, wet, sweaty, whatever. With this grip, the fully optioned out aggressive grip, you have a grip on the gun, and your hands just absolutely lock in. Obviously, you would never ever carry something with a grip this aggressive, because if it touched your skin, it would tear you up, honestly. But for your hands, it's just fine. Again, you know, a typical competition stage is something like 10 to 30 seconds. So I'm not gripping this thing for hours on end. It's less than a minute at a time, and then you can put it down. But just something to really make sure your hands stay gripped. And so that's why I changed the grip. The second major change along those lines, you can see the front of the gun originally had these kind of cuts. You can see there are no front serrations. And I found that when I had to load the gun, if it was an empty handgun start or whatever, I didn't like the lack of front serration. So, you know, you kind of have to use the rear, you have to charge off the optic, and you can do that, but I don't really like doing that. So on the new gun, definitely went with the front serrations, and they are way better. They're usable. Immediate difference in the ability to very quickly rack the gun. You know, in the case where my hands, maybe they're a little sweaty or whatever, or my fingers are cold, whatever, I can grab those serrations and cock it back. And so that was a much better change for the purpose of speed competition. The third change is the front sight. So on this front sight, I went with a green fiber optic front sight. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, except my dot is green. It's a green dot from Holosun, the full-size EPS. And depending on the lighting conditions, especially when it's really bright outside and that fiber optic really lights up, it can be visually confusing between the dot and the front sight. And so, you know, obviously I could just take that tube out, but knowing that I was going to buy a second Platypus, I just haven't bothered. You know, this gun will now just serve as sort of a range gun or something. You know, if someone wants to check out a Platypus, I can let them shoot this gun. Otherwise, try to keep it pretty nice because of its rather unique color scheme. So yeah, so I ditched the fiber optic front and just went to a very traditional white dot sight. You know, I don't really use the iron sights anyway, right? The primary sighting system is the optic, but you can actually co-witness, even though they look pretty low. It's like a bottom quarter, you know, co-witness. So you can actually use the iron sights if my dot goes down, which is good. That's what I wanted. But it's nowhere near as visually distracting because it's just a very small white dot. And it doesn't glow or it doesn't reflect light or whatever. So it's very, very easy to ignore it when you want to, but if you need to use it, you know, it is usable through the bottom of the optic. So that is the third major difference. And the last difference is barrel length, right? So this is a full size, you know, 5-inch plus threaded barrel. And I went down to a sort of a commander style 4 1/4, you know, but it's longer because it's threaded, but a 4 1/4 sized gun. Why? Mainly because of reciprocating mass and the speed at which the dot sort of comes back on target. If you shoot a lot of 2011s or competition guns, you know what I'm talking about. The longer 5-inch guns are sort of smoother to shoot. They have a more pleasant recoil impulse, but the downside to that is the slide physically takes longer to reciprocate, and the dot doesn't return quite as quickly. On the 4 1/4 guns, they snap back. So you might say, oh, well, the recoil is worse. It's not really worse, actually. If you know how to handle recoil, I find that the recoil in practice is better. That dot returns to where my eyes are on the target faster with a shorter gun. You can see that if you go to a lot of matches and you talk to people who shoot that, that's a pretty common prevailing opinion. This isn't like a hot take or anything. A lot of guys are shooting 4 1/4 guns these days over traditional 5-inch guns, and especially in, you know, limited optics. And I think that's why. That's certainly been my experience. So those are the 4 major changes. I changed the grip, I changed the front serrations, I changed the front sight, and I made the gun a little shorter. It's worth noting that from the factory, I did change the recoil spring on the 5-inch gun. I played around with different spring weights to get this dialed in to make it return a little faster. I did not have to do that at all with the 4 1/4 gun. Whatever springs Stealth Arms is putting in these shorter guns is perfect, and I wouldn't want to mess with it. So that's just something to think about too if you're one of those guys who likes to play around with spring weights. I think the commander sized guns are sprung perfectly from the factory, and the 5-inch guns, maybe you could fiddle with them a little bit to find what works best for you. So that's just a quick update on the Platypus. Over 1,000 rounds in the original one, no problem. We're now over 500 rounds on this one. In fact, I think you can, it is like filthy. It's dirty. I need to clean it. There you go. The proof that I actually shoot these things. Go clean them now. But yeah, absolutely flawless function. Of course, now Staccato announced that they're trying to get on this bandwagon too, and they're going to be releasing Staccato guns. I think they're HD maybe, that take Glock mags. So Stealth Arms was definitely sort of the first person to figure this out, but it seems like people are taking notice, and they want to be a part of this too. So more to come in the 2011 world, I'm sure, but for me, I'm going to stick with the Platypus. Thanks for watching, and let me know what you think down in the comments. Do you have any experience with these guns or other 2011s? Do you use them for competition? Just sound off. Thanks, guys.